The pregnant woman's eyes widened with a surge of apprehension as the imposing German Shepherd continued its unwavering barrage of barks, its attention laser-focused on her. She instinctively took an uneasy step backward, one hand moving to cradle her visibly pregnant belly in a protective gesture. "Please, make him stop," she pleaded, her voice tinged with a growing desperation as she cast her gaze around, seeking help or understanding from the surrounding faces. But Rex, the well-trained canine officer, remained resolute. He emitted a low guttural growl from deep within his chest, his powerful muscles bunching and tensing beneath his sleek coat. His amber gaze remained locked onto the woman, an intensity in his stare that suggested she was concealing something dangerous, something that lay hidden beneath the surface. Mark, Rex's handler and a seasoned canine officer, exchanged a knowing look with the other security personnel who had gathered nearby, their expressions a mixture of concern and professional curiosity. Mark knew Rex wasn't acting on mere whim or a sudden dislike. His partner was a highly skilled detection dog, meticulously trained to identify a wide spectrum of threats, from illicit narcotics to concealed explosives. But this situation carried a distinctly different weight, an unsettling undercurrent that Mark couldn't quite place. A troubling question lingered in his mind. Was it possible this woman, despite her seemingly innocuous appearance, was carrying something illegal, something that had evaded the standard security protocols? Or more disturbingly, was Rex sensing a different kind of danger, a threat that lay beyond the realm of their usual training? A nearby officer, a tall figure with a stern and authoritative demeanor, stepped forward, his presence intended to project an air of control and order amidst the growing unease. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions," he stated firmly, his tone leaving little room for argument or refusal. The woman's face, already pale from the initial shock of Rex's intense reaction, now drained of almost all color, a canvas of confusion and escalating fear. I don't understand," she stammered, her voice trembling despite her valiant attempts to maintain composure. "I haven't done anything wrong." A visible tremor ran through her hands as she instinctively tightened her protective grip on her rounded abdomen. A palpable ripple of hushed whispers spread through the immediate vicinity as other passengers, drawn by the commotion, turned their attention to the unfolding drama. Their eyes darted back and forth between the visibly distressed woman and the persistently barking dog, their expressions ranging from open suspicion and judgmental glances to worried frowns and quiet empathy. For the pregnant woman's obvious distress, Mark hesitated, a conflict waging within him. Was this simply an unfortunate misunderstanding? A case of a highly sensitive dog reacting to the heightened hormonal fluctuations or the inherent anxiety often associated with pregnancy? Or was Rex, with his vastly superior olfactory senses and finely tuned instincts, detecting something truly sinister, something that remained imperceptible to the ordinary human senses? Trusting in the unwavering reliability of his canine partner's instincts that had proven accurate and life-saving on numerous occasions, Mark made a decisive call, his voice cutting through the murmuring crowd. "We need to take her in for further screening," he announced, his tone firm and leaving no room for debate. Whatever was happening, whatever Rex was sensing with such intense focus, they had to uncover the truth swiftly and thoroughly, ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone present within the busy airport terminal. Two uniformed officers, their movements a carefully balanced blend of gentleness and firm authority, approached the visibly shaken woman. They carefully but resolutely escorted her toward a private security screening room, their presence a stark contrast to the increasingly public spectacle she had inadvertently become. Her breaths came in rapid, shallow gasps, betraying her escalating anxiety and the growing weight of the situation. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she instinctively clutched her pregnant belly, a silent and desperate plea for the safety and well-being of the precious life growing within her. "Please," she begged again, her voice now barely audible above, a strained whisper, thick with unshed tears and a rising tide of panic. "I don't know what's happening." Mark followed closely behind, his own unease deepening with each step, his mind grappling with the unsettling intensity of Rex's reaction. Rex remained steadfastly at his side, still refusing to calm down or break his unwavering focus on the woman. His sharp, intelligent eyes remained locked intently onto her, his body coiled and tense, like a tightly wound spring poised to unleash. Mark, a seasoned canine handler, had never before witnessed Rex exhibit such persistent agitation, such an unwavering and singular focus on a seemingly non-threatening individual. Inside the sterile and somewhat claustrophobic confines of the screening room, an officer began to meticulously search the woman's carry-on belongings, carefully examining each item, his movements precise and thorough. Meanwhile, another officer prepared the advanced equipment for a more comprehensive body scan, its humming presence adding to the already tense atmosphere. "Do you have any medical conditions we should know about?" a female officer asked, her tone noticeably softer and more reassuring than her male colleagues, attempting to inject a measure of calm into the fraught situation. The woman shook her head, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and utter bewilderment. "No. I'm 7 months pregnant, that's all." Her voice wavered precariously, a subtle tremor of uncertainty running through it, as if even that simple statement felt fragile and potentially incriminating under the intense scrutiny she was currently enduring. Meanwhile, outside the closed door of the screening room, Rex paced back and forth with steadily increasing agitation. He emitted a series of low, distressed whines and scratched insistently at the solid metal door, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered. Mark frowned deeply, his concern now bordering on alarm. This level of persistent distress was far beyond Rex's normal behavior. Even when he had detected significant threats, if the woman wasn't carrying anything illegal, anything that would trigger Rex's training, then what had his exceptional senses detected that was causing such a profound and unsettling reaction? An uneasy silence descended upon the screening room, the air thick with unspoken questions and a palpable sense of foreboding. Then, with startling suddenness, the woman gasped, her hands flying to clutch her stomach with a vice-like grip. A look of stark shock and sudden, searing agony contorted her features, replacing the initial fear and confusion. Something was terribly wrong, far beyond the realm of mere anxiety about a security screening. The room fell into an absolute silence, all eyes fixed on the woman as her face, pale and drawn, contorted further in a grimace of intense pain. She let out a sharp involuntary gasp, her breath catching in her throat as her hands pressed even harder against her swollen belly, as if trying to contain an unbearable internal pressure. "Something's wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with a raw and visceral fear. Beads of cold sweat began to form on her forehead, and her breathing grew increasingly ragged, shallow, and labored. Mark's instincts, honed by years of emergency response training, kicked into immediate high gear. "Get medical assistance now!" he barked at one of the officers, his voice sharp with command and a dawning sense of urgency. The woman's leg suddenly buckled beneath her, and she collapsed into a nearby chair, her body shaking uncontrollably, racked by tremors of pain and fear. Her panic was evident, a raw and visceral display of terror. But beneath the surface, Mark also sensed something else, a deeper, more primal fear that resonated with Rex's earlier agitation. Rex whined and scratched at the door with even greater urgency now, his usual focused alertness having morphed into a clear and unmistakable distress, a desperate plea that mirrored the silent agony emanating from the woman within the room. Mark, witnessing his canine partner's unprecedented reaction, felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. The officer who had been meticulously searching her bag stepped back momentarily, his movements frozen by the sudden and alarming turn of events. Is she going into labor?" he muttered, his eyes wide with uncertainty and a dawning realization that this situation was far more complex and potentially dangerous than they had initially comprehended. The woman shook her head violently, tears now streaming down her pale cheeks. No, it's too early," she gasped between ragged breaths, wincing as another sharp, excruciating pain ripped through her abdomen. "Please, help me." Just then, the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and a paramedic team, alerted by the escalating emergency, rushed into the screening room, pushing through the surprised and somewhat bewildered security personnel. The lead medic, his movements swift and professional, knelt immediately beside the distressed woman. "Ma'am, stay with me," he instructed, his voice calm and reassuring amidst the growing chaos. "We need to get you to a hospital immediately." Mark's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This was no longer a routine security matter. This had become a critical emergency, a race against to save not one, but 2 lives. The paramedics worked with practiced efficiency, their trained hands swiftly checking the woman's vital signs as she groaned in pain. "Her pulse is erratic," one of them murmured to his partner, his brow furrowed with deep concern. "We need to move now." As they carefully prepared to lift her onto a waiting stretcher for rapid transport, Rex suddenly lunged forward, straining fiercely against his leash. He sniffed the air around the woman with a renewed and frantic intensity, his ears flattened against his head, and he let out a low, guttural, deeply uneasy growl, a sound that spoke of imminent and unseen danger. Mark's stomach twisted with a sickening premonition, a cold dread washing over him. Something was still terribly wrong, something beyond the complications of premature labor. Just then, one of the paramedics, his focused attention on the woman's distended abdomen, noticed a subtle but deeply concerning sign. "Wait," he said sharply, his eyes narrowing with a sudden, chilling realization. He carefully pressed his hand against the woman's swollen abdomen, his fingers gently but expertly palpating for the familiar signs of fetal movement. A tense, silent moment stretched between them, and then the paramedic froze, his eyes widening, with a dawning, horrifying understanding. "This isn't just early labor," he announced, his voice grave and filled with a stark urgency. "Something else is happening." The woman's breathing became even more ragged and shallow, her face ashen and deathly pale. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, leaving glistening trails on her skin. "I don't know what's wrong," she whispered, her voice breaking with fear and unbearable pain. "Please, just help my baby." Mark clenched his fists, his mind racing, desperately trying to piece together the puzzle. Rex had sensed danger before anyone else, his primal instincts proving far more acute than any human observation or technological screening. But what exactly had he detected? The answer came in, a chilling, horrifying moment of absolute clarity. One of the paramedics turned to Mark, his face grim and his voice laced with a desperate urgency. "There's an internal rupture," he stated flatly, his words hanging heavy in the tense air. "If we don't get her into surgery now, immediately, both, she and the baby won't make it." Mark's blood ran cold, the weight of the paramedic's devastating pronouncement hitting him with the force of a physical blow. Rex hadn't been wrong. His persistent barking, his frantic energy, his unwavering focus. It hadn't been a false alarm. He had been trying to warn them, desperately trying to save their lives from a silent, invisible threat. The airport screening room, moments before filled with routine security procedures, erupted into a chaotic flurry of urgent activity as the paramedics, their movements now lightning fast and purposeful, rushed the critically ill woman toward the waiting ambulance, the gravity of the situation sinking heavily into the hearts of everyone who had witnessed the unfolding, life-threatening drama.